Most of us are addressing boundaries so wrong. And it's why so many of us end up getting trampled over in the relationships that we are in.
And in addition to that, what I would have to say about boundaries that might just save your life in the most convenient area is that boundaries and the way in which we're setting them, it's not like a crafting art project that you do with the person who is benefiting from you not having them. It's something that you do on your own. You clarify with someone who understands the implications of this boundary and how it will benefit you. So tune into this episode to learn a little bit more on how you can stop setting boundaries wrong.
Hey everybody, it's Bianca.
Welcome back, Evolvers. It's Emilia.
You had a story you wanted to get in?
And
I was starting off
just want to
great.
make sure everyone's paying attention. And we're excited to be here today to talk about boundaries at a level that is a little bit deeper than what we've gone before in the past. Because Bianca, you and I have talked about boundaries before. We're going to continue to talk about boundaries. We're going to continue to share the research, the data, the science, and the fun experiences that we get to see and have personally and clinically with other people. And we both know, we both feel very strongly in this arena that most people are setting, understanding, conceptualizing, utilizing boundaries wrong. And I personally believe it is quite the travesty and can run so many people into the ground and into the arms of those individuals who are benefiting by you not having boundaries. So what I want to share on today's episode, Bianca, was the fact that I am alarmed at how many people are thinking of boundaries as if it's like an art craft project that you do with the person. So picture like, okay, and I won't say names, but I have a client right now who will remain nameless. And this woman shoots me a text and says, Emilia, I'm really excited to clarify those boundaries that we were talking about. And I can't wait to have my ex-partner over so that we can talk about it. I think we should talk about it like later tonight or just maybe do a FaceTime. And I'm like, hold up, wait a second. No. Nope. That is probably the worst idea. I didn't say this, Bianca.
You ever see Sesame Street?
No. But your reaction says it all. Like my brain goes, abso-freaking-lutely not. Of course I didn't say that. Like what my brain says is that is the worst idea you could ever possibly do in the long, sad history of bad ideas. Because this partner, her ex-partner of hers, is like the biggest beneficiary of her not having boundaries. And they've been in this hot and cold kind of relationship trying to break up. And like, just like she's really not doing the work to the extent that she wants to. And a lot of that has to do with the somatic stuff that we're going through, central nervous system stuff. I'll put that aside. But of course, I'm not going to be like, yeah, no, that's the worst idea. Don't do that. Right. That's just shaming narrative. What I had said was, do you think that it's going to be a helpful activity to clarify boundaries that we've talked about with the person who's benefiting from you not having them? And she reflects. She's like, yeah, actually, that's kind of a good point. And I'm like, so let me just say, like, I know like when you do art projects or science projects, you're a team project. That's like really good to do with whoever it is. And if you happen to have your boyfriend doing that team project or that science project with you, like cute, bonus points. But life and boundaries, that's not a cute thing. Like you don't do that because he's the one that's benefiting the whole time. So therefore there's going to be a bias and it's going to be skewed. And honestly, you're outsourcing the boundary making to him, the boundary clarification to him. And that's going to have a opposite effect of what it is that we want. So I broke down, essentially reiterated what we've gone through. And thankfully she's like, yeah, okay, maybe I won't do that. It's like, that's a good idea. And I am happy to report that that didn't end up happening, but it's the sentiment in this, Bianca. You and I have been again and again seeing it's the logic in that, right? Why is there a thought process that goes through someone's mind that says, hey, I feel like I need to set a boundary, but I'm going to outsource that boundary to my ex-partner who's been abusive. And I think it'll be a good idea that we do it together. That's the logic or the lack of. Because what's happening underneath is we're doing it wrong. We're not thinking about the implications. And I just feel, and I know that people turn to us at Evolve to really clarify how to do it instead. So let's break that down, bring in, I know how you feel. Like, let's go back and forth on this because I am happy to go all over with this one.
It's not only let's do it together. It's I need them to be okay with it and I need their approval. Like, hey, is it okay if you do this, this, and this? Which granted, there is a time and a place for that. But when someone is consistently crossing the line with you, that's not the point where you go get their approval of if it's okay that you're protecting yourself. There has to come a time, and you have to know the difference between this is what I'm doing for me and this is what I need to do for me to protect me, to keep me safe, to honor me. And we are actually a team and we are in this together. And I'm going to come to you and we're going to have a conversation and a discussion to see a way forward. But with this client, that 10 out of 10 is not what this was. This was she probably was unconsciously still looking for connection from this person and unconsciously still wanted to be with this person and or wanted validation or sex or whatever from this person. So, just come over and we'll, we'll have a conversation.
Set some boundaries. Which she admitted to all of that.
AKA you're going to end up in my bed and then I'm going to be angry at myself the next day.
Which didn't happen, and I'm grateful for that. But she did admit to a lot of those things that, like, I'm still.
You called it out, though, which is why therapy is so important, or working with someone is so important. Because if you didn't call it out, she would have done it, and then she would have came to you and been like, "Emilia,
100%,
we gotta have a
100%." And how many times have people like come to sessions where it's like, hey, I did this, and it's like, oh my goodness, I wish you checked in, or okay, like reel it in. I really know we've talked about this, and based on the like output of your decision, it tells me that it didn't land in the way it needed to for you in that situation. So let's unwind. And again, this is not like shaming or shunning or guilt tripping anyone. Like, to be fair, and this is something that we went over in group coaching. It was Thursday, right? When this episode comes out, I don't know in correlation to that, but that doesn't matter. Yeah, we talked about needs, right? And needs are something that usually are not right next to the conversation about boundaries. If anything, it's so much more about what do you value and what are the behaviors that you don't want to do, right? It's very like, don't do this or go ahead and protect yourself from this. That's fair. But what we've learned and what we see again and again, that people aren't maybe connecting. And that's where I think that therapy and coaching is so powerful, because you have someone who's not benefiting by you having no boundaries. It's like, oh, well, let's kind of work through what are the implications of you making a really poor decision for yourself that you don't really want to do if you were to zoom out to a future version of you. Oh, okay, there's needs underneath that. You have a need for connection, camaraderie, for relationship that's maybe not getting satiated. So, okay, there's a value that you have of love and feeling significant that this ex-boyfriend of yours provides. So, I mean, it makes sense why you would not want to establish that boundary, or you're looking for approval, or like you want to do this activity of boundary setting together, when in reality, that's not a craft project or a science project, like I said, that you should do with a person that's benefiting from you not having them. And I think that that's where a lot of us get tripped up, because it's like, oh, damn, then I really actually have to face the fact that I have needs. Me not having a boundary kind of meets some of those needs, and setting a boundary by myself or with my therapist or coach that's actually going to have me like have to change a little bit of my behavior that's benefiting me, and long term will also do so. And that's hard.
You know what? I actually had an instance happen very similar to this in my personal life. So,
Yeah.
My coach, he and I sent him a message the other day, Alan. I sent him a message the other day and I said, "Hey, I know that in the past I had told you that I am okay with this particular thing. And I've really been reflecting lately, and I actually don't think I'm okay with that anymore. And here's
Nice.
why. You didn't do anything wrong. This is just me starting to reflect and starting to understand myself a little bit better. And I would really appreciate it if going forward, this would happen instead."
That's great.
I never would have said that in the past because I wanted to be liked. I didn't want any discomfort. I didn't want to be treated differently or get like less quote unquote perks because I set a boundary.
Yeah.
That's another aspect of it too. And I use that personal example because I know a lot of people can relate to that. It's like you don't want to set the boundary with somebody because you're afraid of what they're going to do in response to that. But what are you missing out on? And how are you actually hurting yourself in the long run by not setting that, by not expressing, here's what I'm okay with and here's not, and trying to be liked or not ruffle feathers as opposed to honoring yourself.
Good on you. And thank you for sharing that. That's definitely relatable for so many people. Just when I think about all the Rolodex of conversations that I've had, because think about it, you not having that boundary, what needs that meet for you formerly? Like if we were to think about needs and values, because here's the thing, we want to go and set that boundary or have this idea of setting boundaries, and we do it all wrong because we don't do the kind of upfront work from my perspective. And I'm sure you'll agree with this, and I do still want to hear your thoughts using this example. We don't do the upfront work of clarifying what needs is not having a boundary serving currently. What values do I have that setting a boundary would help me honor? What needs will be satiated by setting a boundary, and what needs, when I set that boundary, will struggle to get met, or am I fearful of not getting met? So those are like 4 or 5 things that you reflecting, Bianca, allowed you to gain the clarity and the insight, which is that quote unquote upfront work that I genuinely believe someone can only do by themselves, or someone that is in that position of a coach or a therapist, solidifying and clarifying who you are, what you value, what your needs are, like that self-reflection process. And if you could break that down for anyone who might relate to that, what are the needs that we're being benefited from by you not having a boundary? Let's start there.
Comfort.
Initially. Yep.
Comfort.
Yep.
Friendship. This idea of significance, and that kind of ties into what I had asked him, but significance of I'm special and I allow this thing.
Okay. Really powerful there. Now, what needs were your parts fearful of not getting met by setting a boundary? Is it the same needs, or is there anything that comes into the fold?
Of not getting met?
Yeah.
Very similar.
Okay. What needs in setting a boundary would now be met by doing so? That is like a perceived benefit.
Self-respect, self-love, self-esteem, autonomy, inner trust.
Okay. Now, what values are you able to honor by establishing a boundary. And this isn't just like, this is within yourself, not yet communicating it with that individual. What values now are being able to be honored within you by clarifying and determining, claiming that this is a boundary I need to honor, right? Before you communicate it with someone.
Honoring myself, actually listening to what my parts are trying to say rather than deflect them out of discomfort. Self-love, growth.
Yeah. Whoa. Based on your experience, what has been now that you have clarified that within you, you have an understanding of the needs, you have an understanding of the fears and the consequences, quote unquote. Now communicating that boundary with that person, that request that was made, what was the actual boundary that you made within yourself? Because here's something that you mentioned before this episode. A lot of people tend to, quote unquote, set a boundary out of like a weaponization kind of component to avoid going through and actually processing certain things. So that's something that I want to bring into the fold, because what I was speaking about earlier with my client, it's, oh, you want to avoid that discomfort of you having to not be connected to your ex. When it comes to communication of a boundary to the person who might be kind of coming up against that, we both know, and can we agree, if not, let's clarify it, that the boundary is meant for you. It is I will do this when this happens. So for example, if and I'm going to use my client in this example, but then I want you to bring in yours. If my ex, let's just name him Andy in this case, if Andy, you end up calling me after 11 o'clock at night or outside of work hours, I'm going to not pick up. That's the boundary, right? Her behavior is not picking up the phone call, and she is literally informing him of her boundary, not asking him to do anything. And that's what a boundary really is. It's when X, I'm going to do Y. I'm not going to expect you to do anything, right? So what was that for you? And it doesn't have to be exactly in this example, but I am curious.
Well, it actually was making a request on his behalf.
Nice.
But it did still feel like a boundary, because the boundary for me was not having certain information disclosed.
Gotcha.
So like I didn't want certain information shared or disclosed. So it was a request of, a boundary for me is having my information and my life and myself protected, respected, so on and so forth. And then the request was, can you blah, 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 blah. But what a lot of people do is they'll say, let's say Emilia came to me and she said, hey, Bianca, there's something that I want to talk to you about. And I got really defensive and I was like, I can't believe you came up to me and said that. That's a boundary. I don't talk about that. That's not a boundary. That's not a boundary. That's you using therapy speak to not have a difficult conversation, which is what a lot of people do. A lot of people weaponize boundaries. They'll weaponize terminology like, you're gaslighting me. You're not being gaslit. Information was presented to you that you don't like or that is uncomfortable. Like things like boundaries have been significantly weaponized, and that's why we're saying, how do you use them appropriately? How do you show up and talk about boundaries and understand what they really are so that you can be protected, respected, have healthy, beneficial relationships?
I think one of the things that might be helpful for individuals listening to this episode is using that, right? That's a reactive way of throwing that therapy speak out there to, like you said, avoid actually sharing and communicating what it is that you feel and what it is or is not the behaviors that you're going to engage with. So for example, in replacement of saying, oh, that's a boundary, blah, 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 I'm not going to talk about it, you can say, I appreciate you being interested in, or you want to do X, and I'm feeling really uncomfortable with that question. And as a result, I would like to take a step back from this conversation and kind of check in with my parts and see if this feels like a safe space conversation for me. Because what I'm picking up on right now is the fact that you're trying to attack, or you're trying to XYZ, whatever, right? Like that's maybe higher level. I want to bring in for a hot second the fact that boundaries are how we're going to engage, meaning what I'm going to do, not what I expect you to do, or what I don't want you to do, or what I don't want myself to do. It is, God, there's got to be a better analogy for this, but like what we said in the beginning of this episode is clarifying what is the need, what is the desire, what is the want for you, what is the fear, what is the concern, what is the value that you want to honor. The boundaries are the like living, breathing engagements of behaviors that you plan on taking when life interacts with you. And I find that not a lot of people are taking responsibility out of the component that refers to boundaries, that is them focused.
Can we say that a boundary is something that you make in response to a request not being satisfied? So for example, let's say I come to you and I say, Emilia, I would really appreciate it if instead of calling me, you message me beforehand and check and see if I'm available. And then if you don't, and that repeatedly happens, then I will say, you know, this is really a boundary of mine. I really don't like being called just off the bat. I really prefer being texted. If this happens again, here's what I'm going to do.
Nice.
Would you say that that is a better way to explain it?
The whole thing?
Yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah. So yeah. It's a living, breathing component from my perspective, based on what you just said, of a acknowledgement of what's happening within the confines of the relationship, the express of a preference, the ideal versus the non-ideal, showcasing one's individuality through preference, and in offering an alternative suggestion to be able to honor one's needs or values better. And I think that if the world communicated more along that realm, you would have the ability to be seen more in your own individuality. And I know that a lot of people, and that's kind of more on the reactive side, I know a lot of people struggle with clarifying who the heck they are. And so that one of the reasons why no one sets a boundary, or they don't do it in this way, is because they don't have like an anchor that they're grounding to. They don't have a self that they're grounding to. They don't know what their needs are even. So yeah.
Boundaries can be proactive or reactive depending on the context. So I can set a boundary with my friends, let's say, and say, a boundary of mine is I don't drink. So I'm not going to go to events where the primary purpose of going to that event is drinking.
Yeah.
That is a boundary, hands down.
Yep.
I don't drink. I'm not going to come. We can do other things, but I'm not going to go to the bar. I'm not going to go to the club. I'm not going to go to big festivals where the entire purpose is to drink.
Yeah.
A boundary can also be reactive. I have asked for this. We have talked about it. I've offered ample alternative solutions. This is still not happening. So as a consequence, here is the boundary. Here is what I'm now going to do. If this happens again, my boundary is, here is how I'm going to respond. So it's very predicated on the circumstance and on the situation.
Definitely. And in that context, it's only a consequence because of the fact that the person on the other side is going to pretty much not be able to benefit anymore by the boundary not being set. They're like,
yes.
In that, boundaries aren't really hard, but it depends on your upbringing, and it depends on your unique circumstance. And it also depends on how much sense of self you actually have. There's a direct correlation between one's sense of self and one's ability or clarity of what the boundary is in place for. So if you have a strong sense of self, you're, statistically speaking, going to have a higher probability of feeling more confident and clarity when it comes to being able to establish behaviors that help you honor that sense of self. If, like this client I mentioned earlier, like we all have in our own different phases of life, depending on where we are and how we're developing, we might have a no sense of self. We might have a shaky sense of self. We might be in the process of evolving our sense of self, right? For example, there was someone that we were speaking to in office hours who's going through a transition, and their sense of self, whenever we go through changes, that gets kind of like put on blast, if you will. And so there's going to be a swing of how does this person honor their sense of self when it comes to their communications with work friends or with family or with their time or whatnot. And when you have a no to low sense of self, or you're in a period or transition of change, or there's a high degree of stress and pressure on quote unquote that sense of self, i.e. when attachment is questioning or when attachment might waver based on you honoring your level of authenticity, that is going to be extremely difficult for you to set boundaries. So it can be hard. It's not hard, but depending on your circumstances, your hard can look very different than someone else's hard. And so, kind of wrapping this episode up, it's understandable why we do it wrong for us, and why we struggle to quote unquote even make progress in this arena, because of the fact that there are so many moving and alive parts within this. Because even when you talk about, like, Bianca, the sense of self underneath that, when I said that, it's like that sense of self is always evolving and developing. So not checking in on your boundaries, the boundaries that had served you when, let's say, you were getting your master's program, might not serve you after you're done and finally graduated, right? Like even just on the communications front with a friend or, an alcohol event or whatever.
Well said.
I feel complete. Do you feel complete in this one?
This was good.
Okay. All right. Cool. More to come for sure, because I think that this is just something that constantly we're going to need to clarify as we evolve with individuals, but grateful for the dialogue.
For sure. Before we give episode suggestions, when this episode comes out later on tonight, if you are listening to this on the same day, we do have Evolve Movie Club. So this episode is coming out on the 1st, which means it is the first Monday of the month. And every first Monday of the month, we host Evolve Movie Club. If you want a really good excuse to watch movies and then to have fun conversations about it, you're welcome. I just gave it to you. Did we decide the movie we're watching yet?
We haven't yet. Nope, that's something that I got to do this weekend. But I have a couple ideas, so we'll put a poll in there.
Even if you didn't watch the movie, it's still a good conversation. We get to learn about ourselves. We get to learn about other people. We get to connect with people. And so many of us feel so isolated and feel like we don't have anywhere to go and people to talk to. So this is a really good space to be able to do that. So if you want to join, let us know. Send us a message or a DM, and we will have you registered for the event. All right. My episode suggestion is 407, The Fear of Finally Using Your Voice.
Woof. Very scary. My episode suggestion, let me find it. Okay, 425, Are You Actually Protecting Your Mental Health? So one thing that I want to say in closing for this episode is the through line of this, in case it wasn't very obvious, at least on my end, is setting a boundary or clarifying why that boundary exists in the first place really should never be done with someone who is benefiting from you not having it. It's not a science project. It's not an art project. It is not something that someone else should have input on other than your therapist or your coach. Like, just put it very bluntly. And to that end, I really do hope that you, with your therapist or coach, take into consideration the unique circumstances, your unique sense of self and your values and the needs that you have, because that's extremely important when it comes to the clarification process of the behaviors that get engaged for the boundary. And I just feel really compelled to say that very explicitly because I do not want this episode misinterpreted. And I wish I had someone said that to me because I definitely in the past had other people help me clarify my boundaries, which did the opposite. And I know I'm not alone in that. So any takeaways on your end, B? What?
I have too many examples that we're just not going to dive into. This is really good for you. You share? Based on what? Okay.
Based on what you
because it benefits you? Oh, nice.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Right. Okay. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have questions, please feel free to DM us. We always respond back to DMs. It's always us responding. We don't have other people sending our messages for us. If you send us a message, it is going to be us that's responding. And we have time available on our calendars. I have time every single day, and then we have collective time together during the week. On the weekends to connect. If you have questions, if you're going through something and you need someone to listen, we are always here. We are available. Send us a message, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.